Hello students, this is a video lecture for the poem Dirge written by James Shirley. As you know, this is prescribed in our syllabus for compulsory English BA 5th semester, and this lecture is for Marathi medium students. So we will be using a mixture of English and Marathi languages both. James Shirley is a very well-known writer in English, and as the introduction goes, we find that he is basically known for the comic description of fashionable life in London. There are so many writers who have written on the fashionable life in London. This is basically creating a kind of humorous account of the life then there in London, and we find that this is also helpful for everybody else to know the cultural we can say the cultural impressions of life in London in the beginning of modern century. James Shirley has written this poem in order to convey a dark idea, preferably we can say, but rather we can say that this is basically more realistic to the human life. The poem conveys the idea of inevitability of death. Inevitability is something that cannot be avoided. अशी कुठलीही गोष्ट जी आपण टाळू शकत नाही आहे. आणि मानवी जीवनाचा जर विचार केला तर त्यामध्ये प्रामुख्याने आपल्याला जी गोष्ट आढळते ती म्हणजे आहे मृत्यू. So James Shirley's description in this poem about death is basically an awakening call to every human being on the earth, and that actually gives us the significance of how human life should be lived, because throughout the poem you will find that the poem tries to convey the idea that howsoever great you are, howsoever powerful you are, howsoever richer you are, and you may be a poor man also, but otherwise we find that these designations and these characteristics of being poor and being rich or being powerful does not create any discrimination for the very cruel reality of life, that is death. Death comes to all, that is the reality. While we study so many poems from English literature, we find that several poets have described death as an inevitable element of human life. बऱ्याचशा पोएम्समध्ये आपण बघतो की मृत्यू हा जो विषय हाताळलेला आहे तो विषय असा अटळ या प्रकारात हाताळलेला आहे. आणि याचा सरळ अर्थ काय होतो आहे की मृत्यू जर अटळ असेल तर सारख्याच वेळेस पोएट्स आपल्याला हेही सांगत असतात की मानवी जीवन जे आहे ते या गोष्टीला लक्षात धरूनच जगलं पाहिजे की केव्हा ना केव्हा तरी आपला अंत होणार आहे किंवा शेवट होणार आहे. आणि मधल्या काळात आपण ज्या पोएम्स बघितल्या, आय ऑल्सो गेव यू रेफरन्स ऑफ अ पोएम दॅट इज एव्हरीमन, and we find that everyone is a poem that is very much symbolic of conveying reality of human life. We discussed that to the tomb म्हणजे थडगं, म्हणजे मृत्यू झाल्यानंतर जे थडगं बांधण्यात येते, कबर जी असते आपण त्याला म्हणतो आहे, तिथपर्यंत किंवा त्याही पलीकडे आपल्याला लक्षात ठेवण्यासारख्या ज्या गोष्टी आहेत त्या म्हणजे आपले चांगले कर्म. सो वी पॉसिबली आर ट्राईंग टू फोकस ऑन the good deeds of your life, because that only make other people to remember you or to create some memories. Else we find that all the physical possessions, say for example your beauty, your richness, your powers, your authorities, or whatever physical possessions in terms of richness you have covered throughout your life, they do not remain as they are. दिस इज ऑल ट्रान्झिटरी. ट्रान्झिटरीचा काय अर्थ होत आहे की ते सगळं असं क्षणिक आहे, ते केव्हाही संपून जाणार आहे. इन्क्लुडिंग ह्युमन लाईफ वी फाइंड दॅट एव्हरीथिंग इज ट्रान्झिएंट ऑर ट्रान्झिटरी. दिस इज ऑल मोमेंटरी. इफ वी हॅव टू गिव्ह इट इन सिम्पल वर्ड्स, इट इज मोमेंटरी. इट मे कम टू एन एंड ॲट एनी पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. सो मोस्ट ऑफन वी फाइंड दॅट पोएट्स ॲक्च्युअली गिव्ह अस द आयडिया that all these momentary things, this momentary life should be given, should be focused on the good deeds of human life, because that only creates a good memory. We go to the introduction of James Shirley's poem Dirge. The title Dirge itself expresses the meaning. And what is the meaning of dirge? Dirge is basically a song generally sung in the memory of a dead person. But this poem by James Shirley is not given to any one person or any individual, but we find that this is for all. So this is basically a message, or what we can say, a caution to everybody else on the human on this earth, where we may most often become forgetful of the end of life. जीवन जगताना मृत्यू येणार आहे या गोष्टीची आपण जराही कल्पना करत नाही, आणि त्यामुळे काय होत आहे की बरेचसे आपले जे कर्म आहेत किंवा जे कार्य आपण करतो आहेत ते या गोष्टीला धरून करण्यात येत नाहीत की केव्हा तरी आपला अंत होणार आहे आणि आपलं जगात नाव राहावं म्हणून आपण कुठल्या विशिष्ट गोष्टी केल्या पाहिजे. तो आपण असं बघतो आहे की इंग्लिश रायटर्स जे आहेत, म्हणजे हे तुम्हाला मराठी रायटर्स सोबत पण किंवा हिंदी रायटर्स सोबत पण ही सारखी आयडिया डिस्कस केलेली मिळू शकते. But especially in English literature or in the field of English poetry, we find that this idea is very highly expressed. Rather, at some point of time, it's my personal opinion that it is worshipped, for the reason that because this is the reality, or we can say that this is the final reality we have to accommodate to. You cannot avoid this, and howsoever powerful you are, you cannot just defeat that. तुम्ही मृत्यूचा पराभव करू शकत नाही, ही त्यामधली एक विशिष्ट गोष्ट. आपण थोडंसं इंट्रोडक्शन बघतो आहे. The lyric dirge is an expert from Shirley's play The Contention of Ajax and Ulysses. It was first published in 1659, and it's a song expressing lament and grief for the dead. Now you see the vocabulary. Lament does mean it's something that is very much unhappy, and grief is actually also unhappiness. Okay, so dirge, lament and grief, these are three words actually give you the actual meaning of the entire context of the poem, that how and for what tone the poem is written by James Shirley. So we find that the basic idea and intention of the poem is to convey you that there exists something more powerful than everything and everyone on this earth, and that is death. मृत्यू जो आहे तोच सर्वात आणि सर्व वस्तूंपेक्षा जास्त ताकदवर आहे किंवा शक्तिशाली आहे हे सांगण्याचा प्रयत्न. In this poem, Shirley talks about the futility of taking pride in earthly glories and material riches. Now, what is an earthly glory and material richness? This richness is all about the richness of possessions you have on this human earth. When we talk about the futility of glories, this we can align with the glories of your power, the glories of your popularity, the glories of your beauty. तुमचं सौंदर्य असेल, सत्ता असेल, तुमच्याकडे काही अधिकार असतील, तुम्ही प्रसिद्ध असाल, तर या साऱ्या गोष्टी ज्या आहेत त्या वैभव म्हणजे ग्लोरी या कॅटेगरीमध्ये येतात. नाउ दिस ऑल कम्स टू एन एंड वन्स यू आर डेड. वन्स द डेथ हॅज कॉन्कर्ड यू, everything from the glories to the richness, from those physical popularity to the physical possessions, we find that everything comes to an end, and the manner is sudden. Death comes suddenly, and everything also ends in a sudden manner. So we find that death does not allow you to prepare for the next journey, or what we generally consider while we study poems is death is basically an entry or an entrance towards a new life, that is a life that begins in the heaven. Death doesn't allow you, याचा अर्थ असा होतो की it comes at sometimes uncertain moments. तुम्हाला या गोष्टीची माहिती मिळू शकत नाही की तुम्हाला डेथ केव्हा येणार आहे म्हणून. सो Poet actually wants you to become aware of the fact that death comes for certain, and it comes it comes at any moment of time. So what we should be prepared for is, we should be prepared for doing all those good deeds throughout our life, so that we can create a good memory, so that people can remember us, so that even you can die in a peaceful manner, having a notion in mind that you have done the best part on the earth, and now it's time to say goodbye to the earth. Okay, so this is how poet actually lays down the idea in this poem. The next line says that nobody can immune to the merciless hands of death. The immune is what? We cannot protect ourselves from the forthcoming death. See, because death comes at any moment of time, you can never feel prepared for it. You can never create any measures of protection also, because death comes to one and death comes to all, and it comes at uncertain moments of time. We cannot possibly defeat death. You may have all your richness, you may have all your glories, you may have a larger army even to defeat other army, but not to the death. So death is unconquerable. यावर तुम्हाला विजय मिळवता येणे शक्य नाही. डेथ कॉन्कर्स एव्हरीबडी. डेथ जी आहे, मृत्यू जो आहे, तो सर्वांवर विजय प्राप्त करतो. म्हणजे तो सर्वात जास्त शक्तिमान आहे, शक्तिशाली आहे, हे पोएटला यामधून सांगायचं आहे. पॉवर, ग्लोरी अँड रिचेस, दे ऑल सकम टू डेथ इन द एंड. 3 टर्म्स आर देअर. कोणत्या 3 गोष्टी सांगितलेल्या आहेत? पॉवर, रिचेस आणि ग्लोरी. तुमच्याकडे असलेले अधिकार, सत्ता आणि तुमच्याकडे असलेली श्रीमंती. रिचेस इज श्रीमंती, बट वी कॉल इज दॅट फिजिकल पोझेशन्स. सो वी फाइंड दॅट दिस ऑल कम्स टू अन एंड व्हेन डेथ कॉन्कर्स यू. मृत्यू ज्यावेळेस तुमच्यावर विजय प्राप्त करते, त्यावेळेस तुमच्याकडे असलेले अधिकार, पैसा, तुमचं वैभव, तुमचं सौंदर्य, तुमच्याकडे असलेली संपत्ती, या साऱ्या गोष्टी झटकन संपून जातात आहे. Shirley ends the poem with a reminder to the reader that a just life and good deeds are the only things that will always be remembered. हे आपण बघतो आहे वारंवार. What Shirley wants to create with the readers is an opinion. It's basically a stark reality of life. It's basically a caution. It's basically a message. It's basically an advice or suggestion that it is the good deeds that will accompany you to the grave. It is the goodness that will accompany you to the grave. It is the virtues that will accompany you to the grave and nothing else. So finally there is only one companion, and that is death. Death is the only companion that leads you to the grave, and it remains with you forever. That is very important to be learnt from this poem. Now we go to the text of the poem. The glories of our blood and state are shadows, not substantial things. What does the poet say? The glories of our blood and state. Now what does the word blood suggest? The blood suggests your lively appearance on this earth. Now till the moment we live, we try to conquer many things. We try also to we can say possess many things. We try to possess as many riches as we can. We try to create as many authorities, as many power as we can, and everything, including your body, this power, richness, glory, and perhaps all kinds of authorities you might have earned during your lifetime on this earth, that all is counted as shadows only. And what is the existence of a shadow? It's null. There is no existence of a shadow. Shadows are basically false. See, what poet wants to say, that unless there is a physical substance or physical thing available, there would be no shadow. Okay, so shadow here in this poem actually gives us the impression of falsity or falsehood or something that is very false. So everything that is counted under riches, power, glory, your own body, that is blood and state, is actually false. Okay, now then what is reality? See, the poem gives us two opinions in contrast. One is all about the reality of life, and the other is all about the falsehood. So, what is falsehood? Falsehood is your glory, is your riches, and your beauty also. Okay, that's how. And there is okay, the next word is substantial things. Not substantial does mean that they are not going to live forever, they are not going to be in the existence forever. Everything will come to an end. There is no armor against fate. Fate is your fortune. Armor, something that is worn during a war. चिलखत ज्याला आपण मराठीत म्हणतोय, किंवा असलं कुठलंही परिधान ज्यापासून आपल्याला स्वतःचं संरक्षण करता येते. डेथ जो है, डेथ जे आहे त्यापासून स्वतःचं संरक्षण करण्यासाठी कुठलंही आर्मर, कुठलाही परिधान किंवा कुठलाही पोशाख जो आहे तो आपल्या कामात येत नाही. यू मे क्रिएट an army that will help you to fight against the army of the enemies, but you cannot create an army to fight with death, because death is all powerful and it conquers everybody else. Death lays his icy hands on kings, scepter and crown must tumble down. Now this is a very popular line. Death lays his icy hands on kings. ही जी ओळ आहे ही जनरली इंग्रजी व्याकरणामध्ये आपण ज्यावेळेस मेटॅफर हा फिगर ऑफ स्पीचचा प्रकार शिकतो त्यावेळेस या प्रकार ही जी लाईन आहे ती वारंवार रेफर केली जाते. डेथ जी आहे ती मेटॅफरिकल यूज केला गेलेला आहे या ठिकाणी. डेथ जी आहे म्हणजे मृत्यू हा एक असा आपण त्याला काय म्हणूया की एक अशा प्रकारातली शक्ती आहे जी तुमच्यावर आपले असे बर्फाळ, आयसी हँड्स म्हणजे कसे बर्फाळ थंड. नाउ दिस हॅज अ सिग्निफिकन्स टू दी डेड बॉडी ऑल्सो. अ बॉडी दॅट इज नो मोर अलाइव्ह, दॅट इज डेड, goes actually cold. It loses its warmth. टेम्परेचर म्हणणं शक्य होणार नाही. वार्मथ जी आहे, जी एका जिवंत माणसामध्ये असते, जी उष्मा असते, that actually disappears. Okay, it is completely given out and the body goes colder. So we find that when death comes, all bodies go cold, and that is why it is considered that death has icy hands. मृत्यूचे जे हात आहेत जे कसे आहेत बर्फासारखे आहेत, या प्रकारातला अर्थ या पोएम मध्ये जेम्स शेरली यांनी घेतलेला आहे. डेथ लेज हिज आयसी हँड्स ऑन किंग्स. आता बघा मृत्यू कोणाकोणाला येतो आहे. डेथ लेज हिज आयसी हँड्स ऑन किंग्स, सेप्टर अँड क्राउन, अँड दे ऑल मस्ट टम्बल डाऊन. आता टम्बल डाऊन म्हणजे खाली पडणे. सेप्टर इज बेसिकली तलवार, इट इज अ सिम्बल ऑफ पॉवर, अँड क्राउन इज मुकुट जो आपण डोक्यावर घालतो. आपण म्हणजे जसं राजे घालतात किंवा कुठलाही अधिकार किंवा पॉवर असलेला व्यक्ती म्हणजे परिधान करतो आहे. जेम्स शेरलीला काय सांगायचं आहे की डेथ जी आहे, मृत्यू जो आहे, इट डज नॉट क्रिएट एनी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन. देर इज नो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ऑफ टाइम ऑल्सो. सी, फॉर द फर्स्ट कैटेगरी there is no discrimination between a poor and a rich. Death comes to one and all. And the next is there are no references or there are no incidents reported that rich people die late and poor people die early. There is no reference even to a fact that people, those who are powerless, die early, and people, those who are powerful, they die later. देयर इज नो रेफरन्स. गरीब लोक आधी मरतात, श्रीमंत लोक नंतर मरतात, जे सुंदर असतात ते नंतर मरतात किंवा त्यांना भरपूर वेळ भेटतो जगायला, जे कुरूप असतात ते लवकर मरतात, असा कुठलाही रेफरन्स नाही. मृत्यू सर्वांना येतो, तो कुठल्या तरी वेळेवर येतो. कधी कधी ती वेळ जी आहे ती इतकी सडन आणि अचानक असते की आपण ते सांभाळू पण शकत नाही. सो जेम्स शेरली वेन वॉन्ट्स टू से दॅट डेथ लेज इट्स आयसी हँड्स ऑन क्राउन, सेप्टर and kings and they all must tumble down, he actually wants to convey as a meaning that all such things, those who are considered most powerful, also tumble down. They also kneel down to the death. kneel down मतलब उसके सामने घुटने टेक देना. म्हणजे आपण काय म्हणतो आहे, that while a king lives, he might be he might have a boastful opinion of his territory, of his power, of his army, of his queen, of his sons, the prince and princess, and huge palaces also. But everything comes to an end. Once you are no more on this earth, nothing remains. It all comes down. This is the first stanza of the poem. We go to the next. And in the dust be equal made with the poor, crooked scythe and spade. Scythe matlab anything that helps you to cut down the crops. What happens is, death is actually like a killer also. In its what we can say, a very informal meaning, it's cruel. It's cruel for the sense that because it comes at any moment of time, and it does not create any discrimination, it does not allow any passing or cheating by somebody else. Okay, there is no partiality, कुठलाही भेदभाव करत नाही. And in the dust be equal made. Now two words are very important, dust and equal. Now who are those equals? What we can find is the rich and the poor, the powerful and the powerless, the beautiful and the and those who are not beautiful. Okay, they all lay down in the same soil, and all of them turn to dust or to soil. सगळेच लोक जे पॉवरफुल असतात किंवा पॉवरलेस असतात, जे सुंदर असतात किंवा ते कुरूप असतात, ते गरीब असतात किंवा ते श्रीमंत असतात, त्या सगळ्यांसाठी एकच जागा निश्चित केलेली आहे, ती म्हणजे माती, सॉइल. आणि या सगळ्यांची मृत्यूनंतर डस्टच तयार होत असते. डस्ट का मतलब माती तयार होत असते. गरीब लोक आहेत म्हणून त्यांना पुरल्यानंतर त्यांचं एखाद्या धातूत रूपांतर होते का? चांदी होते त्यांची, सोनं होते. गरीब लोकांचीच फक्त माती होते असा कसलाही रेफरन्स नाही. सो पोएट ॲक्च्युअली वॉन्ट्स अस टू गिव्ह अ मेसेज that when everything is destined to become dust, या प्रत्येकच व्यक्तींपैकी सगळ्यांचीच समजा शेवटी मातीच होणार असेल आहे मृत्यू पश्चात, तर मग हा जो सगळा आपण भेदभाव तयार केलेला आहे, कोणता? हा गरीब, हा श्रीमंत, हा सुंदर नाही, कुरूप आहे, हा याला अधिकार नाही, हा सत्ताधारी आहे आणि हा सत्ताहीन आहे, हे जे पार्शालिटीज आहेत, या सगळ्या पार्शालिटीज ज्या आहेत त्या कुठल्याही कामाच्या नसतात. हा भेदभाव फक्त पृथ्वीवर जिवंत असतानाच लोक तयार करतात आहे. त्यानंतर आपल्याला हा भेदभाव कुठल्याही कामाचा दिसत नाही, कारण सगळ्या लोकांचं जे डेस्टिनेशन आहे, जे शेवटचं स्थळ आहे ठरलेलं, ते काय आहे? मातीच आहे, सॉइल, दॅट इज डस्ट. जेम्स शेरली बाय युजिंग दिस वर्ड डस्ट actually tries to create a very significant opinion that everyone comes to an end and everyone finally meets to death. Nobody can conquer death. It is the death that conquers everybody else. Conquer करणे म्हणजे काय? जिंकणे. And in the dust be equal made with the poor, crooked scythe and spade. आता scythe and spade म्हणजे फावडा जो असतो आपल्याकडे, scythe म्हणजे ते कापायचा विळा जो असतो आहे. या ज्या दोन गोष्टी आहेत, these are actually used by farmers in order to level the farmland. Okay, शेतीची जमीन लेवलिंग करायसाठी ते वापरले जातात. So we find that death is actually like a farmer which creates a particular leveling of all the people, those who consider themselves unequal when they are alive. जिवंत असताना लोकांना या भरपूर गोष्टींचं भान असते. इनइक्वॅलिटीज म्हणजे कोणती इनइक्वॅलिटी आहे? असमानता कोणती आहे? गरीब आणि श्रीमंतासारखी. पण मृत्यू झाल्याच्या पश्चात आपण पाहतो आहे की इनइक्वॅलिटी कुठेच नसते, सगळेजण इक्वलच असतात, कारण सगळ्यांचं डेस्टिनेशन ठरलेलं असते आणि सगळ्यांसाठी एकच क्रायटेरिया आहे. तो कोणता? दॅट ऑल बॉडीज आर कन्वर्टेड इनटू डस्ट, दॅट इज सॉइल. So all kinds of inequalities are actually killed and everything is made equal. For this reason we should be thankful to death. In that case, death is kind to everybody else because it establishes equality. It actually nullifies, it actually kills, it actually defeats all kinds of inequalities also. Okay, and this cannot be done by anybody else. There is no such power which creates equality for all. It is the death only that creates equality to everybody else. Now the next stanza, some men with swords may reap the field and plant fresh laurels where they kill. Okay, so there is a reference to warfield, okay, to army, to the people, those who fight at the warfield. But their strong nerves at last must yield, they tame but one another still. Very good lines, खूपच सुंदर lines आहेत. Some men with swords may reap the field. Now what is this field? This field is not farmland. The field शेतकऱ्यांचं शेत नाही. This field has a reference to war field, because there is another word which is attached to the phrase, that is swords. And swords म्हणजे काय? तलवारी. Now this reference to war field is actually a reference to power. Okay, power of the military, power of the armament. We find that there have been so many warriors, there have been so many soldiers, there have been so many kings and knights who have marked their presence in the human history by their best and courageous deeds. इतक्या वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारचे राजे किंवा खूप मोठे मोठे योद्धे, खूप मोठे मोठे सरदार आणि सैनिक झाले, ज्यांनी कुठल्या तरी युद्धामध्ये आपला पराक्रम गाजवलेला आहे. पण फायनली त्यांचंही काय झालं? दे ऑल हॅव कम टू द डस्ट. पोएट वॉन्ट्स टू से दॅट देर मे बी सम पीपल who can be held high and they can be counted as great men on the earth by the time they are in the battlefield or by the time they are alive on the earth. But what happens at the end is there is nothing special about them, because they all become dust when they die. It is possible that people may remember their deeds. People may remember that how courageously they fought at the war field. People may also remember that how courageous was their presence for the entire human history. But finally even they could not be immortal. Immortal म्हणजे अमर. ते सुद्धा काही अमर झालेले नाहीत. It is true that their deeds have become immortal. त्यांनी जे कर्म केले ते मात्र अमर झालेले आहेत. But no individual could live beyond the regime of the death. मृत्यूने जिथपर्यंत आपल्याला एक रेषा ओढून दिलेली आहे की इथपर्यंत तुमचं आयुष्य आहे, त्याच्या पलीकडे कोणीही जगलेलं नाही. मग ते राजे असतील, खूप मोठे योद्धे असतील, खूप वैभव संपन्न व्यक्ती असतील, खूप श्रीमंत असतील, खूप सौंदर्यवान असतील आहे, या सगळ्यांचं शेवटी एकच डेस्टिनेशन होतं आणि ते म्हणजे डस्ट. दुसऱ्या या स्टांजामध्ये पोएट आपल्याला काय सांगतो आहे? दॅट देअर कॅन बी सम पीपल हू actually made their presence felt to everybody else by their courageous deeds. They were the best soldiers, they were the best kings, they were the best warriors also, and their deeds were the best of their courageous kind. But even they could not win the death. They could win everybody. They could win every other king, they could win all their enemies, but they could not win death. त्यांनी सगळ्यांचा पराभव केला, परंतु त्यांनी मृत्यूचा पराभव केला नाही, कारण ते शक्यच नाही, बिकॉज डेथ इज पॉवरफुल दॅन एव्हरीवन. नेक्स्ट टू लाइन्स, देअर स्ट्रॉंग नर्व्स ॲट लास्ट मस्ट यील्ड, दे टेम बट वन अनदर स्टील. व्हॉट हॅपन्स? नर्व्सचा या ठिकाणी काय अर्थ होता आहे? मसल्स म्हणजे पॉवर, शारीरिक शक्ती जी आहे, नर्व्स. Sometimes we can also extend the meaning of nerves to their aspirations. मतलब काय झालंय, त्यांच्या ज्या महत्वाकांक्षा होत्या त्याही अशाच अत्युच्च होत्या, अतिशय वेगळ्या प्रकारच्या आणि उंचीच्या, पण त्या महत्वाकांक्षाही फायनली कुठल्या ना कुठल्या दिवशी संपलेल्या आहेत, हे जेम्स शेरलेला सांगायचं आहे. They tame but one another still, early or late they stoop to fate. Stoop is walk, fate is fortune. अर्ली ऑर लेट, आता किंवा नंतर, म्हणजे लवकर किंवा उशिरा, आज किंवा उद्या, केव्हा ना केव्हा या सगळ्या ज्या मोठ्या मोठ्या व्यक्ती होत्या, किंवा आता वारफील्डचा रेफरन्स चालू आहे, म्हणून जे सोल्जर्स होते किंवा जे राजे होते किंवा जे योद्धे होते त्यांनी एक दुसऱ्याला मारण्याचा प्रयत्न केला. टेमिंग मतलब क्या आहे? टेमिंगचा अर्थ काय होतो? TAME, टेमिस बेसिकली डिफीट करणे. या ठिकाणी पोएटिक मिनिंग आहे किंवा पराभव केला. त्यांनी एक दुसऱ्याचा पराभव केला, पण शेवटी या दोघांचाही पराभव जो आहे तो कोणी केला आहे? मृत्यूने केलेला आहे. सो पीपल ड्युरिंग देअर लाईफ टाईम टेंड टू टेम people of say kind of because they are enemy, or sometimes because you have the feelings of jealousy, because there is competition, and because you want to stand superior to many. असं बऱ्याचदा होत असते. You try to defeat many, but finally you are defeated by death. That is the stark reality. They stoop to fate. What does it mean? Early or late they stoop to fate. That is आज या कल, आज किंवा उद्या केव्हा तरी तुमची जी जर्नी आहे, तुमचा जो प्रवास आहे तो शेवटी कुठे होतो? मृत्यूकडेच होतो. हे ॲक्च्युअली पोएटला या ठिकाणी सांगायचं आहे. अँड मस्ट गिव्ह अप देअर मर्मरिंग ब्रेथ when they pale captives creep to death. See, there are lot many words which actually signify how powerful is death, how weak we are, how transient is the physical possession, and how momentary is human life. It is expressed through almost every line. These two lines, this couplet, and must give up their murmuring breath. Now what is murmuring breath? Breath is श्वास आपण जो घेतो आहे, ब्रीदिंग. दॅट ब्रीदिंग फायनली गोज विकर. हळूहळू श्वास जो आहे तो कसा होत जातो आहे? कमकुवत होतो, वीक होतो आहे. नाव a weakened breath is actually is actually an indicator of life closing to death. A weakening breath is actually an indicator of life closing to death. श्वास हळूहळू कमी होत जातो, म्हणजे हळूहळू जीवनाकडून मृत्यूकडे आपला प्रवास सुरू होतो. ते जेम्स शेरलेला सांगायचं आहे. When they, now who are they? These all people who considered themselves once rich to many, powerful to many, and say beautiful to many. These all people. हे सगळे व्यक्ती ज्यांनी स्वतःला इतरांपेक्षा श्रेष्ठ समजलेलं आहे, अशा सगळ्याच व्यक्ती जे आहेत किंवा ज्यांच्या पासून ते श्रेष्ठ होते त्याही व्यक्ती, या सगळ्या व्यक्ती ज्या आहेत, दे पार्शियली, फायनली, ग्रॅज्युअली reach to their fate. And what is the fate of human life? Fate of human life is death. मानवी जीवनाचं जे अंतिम सत्य आहे ते काय आहे? मृत्यूच आहे. This is also given by the Buddha, that the death is ultimate reality of human life. And this, now this can be seen both ways. When somebody tells you that death is the ultimate reality of life, there is a possibility that some people may go pessimistic. कुछ लोग एकदम काही लोक जे आहे व्यक्ती ते नाराज होऊ शकतात की तुम्ही मध्येच कुठला तरी म्हणजे मृत्यूचा रेफरन्स आणला म्हणून, पण ते टाळता येत नाही. हे सगळ्यात महत्त्वाचं. याचा दुसरा इफेक्ट असा होतो, when people are given this message that death is the ultimate reality of life, they immediately become cautious of how they should plan their life. हे दोन्ही इफेक्ट आहेत. लोकांना ज्यावेळेस हे कळतं की शेवटी मृत्यूसोबतच गाठ आहे, तर ते आपल्या जीवनाचं प्लॅनिंग करतात की जे जीवन मिळालेलं आहे ते अतिशय उत्कृष्ट पद्धतीने कसं घालवता येईल. तो असं होत असते that people receive the messages or they receive advices and suggestions by both ways. Sometimes people go unhappy, sometimes people go happy. So when you are told that death is the ultimate reality, there is a chance that some people may become very much happy over the thought that yes, this is the time that I should plan my life the best way possible. Some people may go unhappy by knowing the fact that death may come at any point of time, and there is no chance to plan my life, or there is no chance to engage myself in the good deeds. Let the life be lived as it allows. असं पण होऊ शकतं आहे. But a good human being is always thoughtful about how human life can be lived the best possible way when he or she is made aware that death is the ultimate reality. Okay, and now we are reaching to the last stanza of the poem. The I forgot to mention one line. When they pale captives creep to death. Pale captives, now death is the master. Captives म्हणजे काय? Captive म्हणजे कैदी. Death is the master. मालक कोण आहे? मृत्यू आहे. And we all are the captives. आपण सगळे कैदी आहे. We all are captives. Death is the master, and it is only after the instructions of the master that the captives try to creep to their master. Now creeping is what? म्हणजे रांगत जाणे बेसिकली गुडघ्यांवर. फायनली होतं काय आहे? When we become aware that we cannot avoid death and death is the most powerful element, we try to beg life. We actually remember almost every moment of our life. We also go repentant over what mistakes and wrong deeds we have done in the life. असं होत असते. मृत्यू जसा जसा जवळ येतो तसं तसं आपल्याला साऱ्या गोष्टी आठवतात आणि त्यामध्ये जर आपण काही चुका केल्या असतील तर त्याविषयीचा पश्चातापही आठवतो. बट व्हेन डज इट हॅपन? इट ऑल हॅपन्स व्हेन वी आर ॲक्च्युअली मूव्हिंग क्लोजर टू डेथ. How good it is if we go repentant over our wrong deeds during lifetime. आपण जिवंत असताना समजा चुकीच्या गोष्टींवर आपल्याला पश्चाताप झाला तर we get brighter chances to redeem ourselves from all those wrong deeds. We also have a chance to repent and also promise to ourselves that we will not engage ourselves into such wrong deeds again. Rather we can plan our life the best way possible. But what a pity, we never become repentant over the wrong things unless we reach closer to death. Even this is what we can say the foolishness of human life on the earth, and many people fall prey to this because they don't get time to recount their life, they don't get time to recall their deeds, they don't get time even to plan things, and therefore they live their life as it allows. They go for what we can say what we can say the unhealthy ways of life are practiced, and then when it is reaching to death they become repentant, but that is of no use then. The garlands wither on your brow, and then boast no more your mighty deeds. Now this is the final journey. James Shirley wants to say that when the garlands on your brow becomes faded. फेड होतात म्हणजे काय होतात? बेसिकली गार्लँड इज व्हॉट? फुलांचा हार. सिम्बॉलिक मिनिंग आहे. फुलांचा हार जो आहे, फुलं काय होतात आहे? आज तुम्हाला टवटवीत दिसतात आहे, पण उद्याच्या दिवशी ते पूर्णतः कोमेजलेली असतात आहे. इवन दिस गिव्स यू a very simple message that nothing can live for permanent. The nature around us gives us messages on daily basis. Almost for every moment there is a message from nature that nothing lives for permanent. The falling leaves, the yellow leaves, the withering flowers, they all have a message into it. And what is the message? That nothing can be for permanent. But we are ignorant and we do not consider those messages from the nature, and therefore we repent when we reach closer to death. We become ignorant to many things around us, and therefore do not stand a chance to correct our ways in the life. Then boast no more your mighty deeds upon death's purple altar now. See where the victim bleeds. Now there is a reference to these two individuals. Who are those two individuals? One is the victor, the one who has conquered others, and another is the victim, the one who is conquered by others. एक जो विजय झाला आणि दुसरा जो पराभूत झाला, या दोघांचीही अवस्था मृत्यू समयी सारखीच असते. Now there is a reference to a color that is purple. Okay, now this color has its significance and connection with royalty. James Shirley has given us how death comes to us. It comes to us in purple. That is, because death is powerful to everybody else, it comes in a royal manner. Okay, death doesn't beg life, it is the life that begs to death for extension of life, for some more moments of life, for repentance in life. But death disqualifies everything and it wins everything. James Shirley wants to convey as a message that when we become ignorant of death, it even becomes powerful. When you are aware of death, it allows you little time to go for the good deeds in life. But we have always remained ignorant about this reality in life, and therefore there is unhappiness, worries and grief everywhere. प्रत्येक ठिकाणी आपल्याला दुःख यासाठीच सापडतं कारण आपण अज्ञानी असतो, बऱ्याचशा गोष्टींचा आपण विचारच करत नाही. सी वेअर द विक्टर अँड विक्टिम ब्लीड्स. when death comes, it looks upon the victor and the victim both without any partiality, because death has to lay his icy hands on both of them. ती कसलाही भेदभाव करत नाही, तिला दोघांचाही मृत्यू हवा आहे. म्हणून जो जिंकला त्याची आणि जो हारला त्याची अवस्था सारखीच असते मृत्यूसमयी. युअर हेड्स मस्ट कम टू द कोल्ड टूम. सी, पुन्हा एकदा कोल्ड असा शब्द आलेला आहे. याच्या आधी पण सुरुवातीच्या स्टांजामध्ये कोल्ड शब्द आला होता. डेथ लेज हिज कोल्ड हँड्स, आयसी हँड्स बेसिकली म्हणजे कोल्डच. कोल्ड टूम इज वाय कोल्ड? बिकॉज देर इज नो लाईफ, देर इज नो वार्मथ, there is nothing that can have its own movements. It is all still. ते सगळं थांबलेलं आहे, स्थिर झालेलं आहे. and this this stillness is basically is the stillness of death. ही जी स्थिरता आहे ही बेसिकली मृत्यूची स्थिरता आहे. that James Shirley wants to convey. Now when we talk about death in general terms, there can be a reference to many things. Even the physical possessions, they come to an end, even they die. The biggest ever forts, the most beautiful palaces, the most what we can say, the most glorious territories that were once won by the kings of human history, they are nowhere now. There are no territories of the kings, there are no palaces, they all have become dust. Even the best things which were created by the kings as heritage things, they all have come to an end because they all were subject to the change of seasons, change of time. A very permanent message is there is nothing that lasts beyond death. There is nothing permanent. It is the death that is permanent. मृत्यू जो आहे तोच फक्त नेहमीसाठी आणि सतत असतो आहे. जीवन जे आहे ते काही सतत राहत नाही किंवा नेहमीसाठी राहत नाही. ओनली द ॲक्शन्स ऑफ द जस्ट. हे बघा आता शेवटच्या ज्या दोन ओळी आहेत, व्हॉट डज इट सजेस्ट? ओनली द ॲक्शन्स ऑफ द जस्ट. व्हॉट डज इट सजेस्ट? इज जस्टिस समथिंग दॅट इज what we can say, if it is in the context of an individual, a just individual is the one who actually is able to understand, is able to identify, is able to recognize what is wrong and what is right. Someone who is able to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong is a just individual. And James Shirley wants to say that if something is to be carried out to the cold grave, to the cold tomb, that is the justness of an individual. A just individual always engages himself into the practices of truth, into the practices of goodness, into the practices of healthy lifestyle, into the practices of cooperation and helping others. He is kind, he is merciful, he is helping, he is loving, if these are all the virtues practiced in human life, then you can stand at par with death, because this cannot be killed by death. Individuals are killed, individuals go to the dust when they die, but not the good deeds, not your best memories. They live beyond death. आपण जे चांगले कर्म केलेले असतात त्याला मृत्यू सुद्धा हरवू शकत नाही. मृत्यू पश्चातही आपण केलेल्या चांगल्या गोष्टी सतत लोकांच्या लक्षात राहतात, म्हणजेच त्या सतत जिवंत राहतात. Now if you want to live beyond death, see, physically it is not possible to live beyond death. शरीर जर आपण कन्सिडर केलं तर शरीर मृत्यूच्या पश्चात जिवंत राहू शकत नाही, पण आपण केलेली चांगली कर्म जी आहेत ती मात्र मृत्यू पश्चात जिवंत राहतात, हेही जेम्स शेरलीला सांगायचं आहे. Though we find that the entire text of the poem is all about death, James Shirley doesn't forget also to mention that there is something which is even important than death. And what is that? That is the good deed. Good deeds are important and they live beyond death. The last line is, only the actions of the just smell sweet and blossom in their dust. So if you ever find that a particular tomb, a particular grave is full of warmth into it, then you find that this could be the grave or tomb of a man or an individual who has done the best deeds in his or her life. Else all tombs and graves are cold. If you wish to have little warmth into it, then you will have to be there with the good deeds and you can live beyond death. Now when we find that it is not possible to conquer death, it is not possible to live beyond death, just remind yourself what others have done to live beyond death. You may have hundreds of examples where people have actually outrun death, they have outdone death, they have conquered death. And how did they do it? By doing the best deeds in their life. Now what are those best deeds? As we just mentioned, you need to be an individual who understands the difference between the wrong and the right. You need to be an individual who has got the values of mercifulness, values of being kind to others, helping others, the values of cooperation, the values of working along when somebody is in distress. You need to help them. These are the best deeds that give you an extra life after death. This is what James Shirley wants to convey to us. With the entire text of the poem, we get larger space given to death as a reality, but towards the conclusion of the poem, we find that James Shirley wants to issue an advice, a suggestion, or basically a caution to everyone on the earth that even death can be conquered, but not by body. Death can be conquered by the best deeds of your life, and that stays for permanence. So this is how James Shirley gives us the description of death to human being and how to outlive it. Thank you.